Protests continue in Hong Kong, and the threat of violence makes the situation ever more dangerous, with the region's leaders seeking solutions to the real problems affecting the people and their future there. What measures will be taken and prioritized in maintaining stability and the rule of law? How should the balance in one country, two systems best be achieved? And what are the obstacles to overcome in ensuring the continued success of Hong Kong? To discuss these issues and more, I'm happy to be joined in the studio by Professor Liao Fan from the Institute of International Law at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences and He Jing, attorney at ANJIE law firm. We'll also speak via satellite to Hong Hao, chief strategist from the Bank of Communications International in Hong Kong. That's our topic. This is a dialogue. I'm Yang Rui. Welcome to our discussion here, gentlemen. In some ways, Western observers who follow the development in Hong Kong pointed out that, in fact, the SAR government is losing the battle for minds and hearts, in that rule of law has been seriously undermined due to over 2 months of unrest in this territory, where angry young people took to the street in protest of whatever they demand. I mean, that has helped plunge the region into chaos. What do you think of the future of rule of law as a lawyer?
Well, first of all, I think it's probably a little bit too much to assert the rule of law system in Hong Kong is in big trouble. We have to be very clear, okay, in almost all the countries, okay, around the world, most regions around the world, that the system always find it very challenging to deal with this kind of a protest, okay. Now, thinking about the globalization and then the social media's influence, it's not easy, all right. So far, I think it's probably too early to say the rule of law system in Hong Kong does not work. Yes, it's true, the law and order is really being heavily challenged, okay? But it's not about the failure of rule of law when you see the protests really continue. And it's actually the constitutional rights, right, for the people to go on the street to do the protest, even though a lot of people don't really want that, or it's costs a lot in terms of economic cost or some other cost. But it's a different issue whether it's the rule of law system is fair or not.
Dr. Liao, if it's not the rule of law itself that takes the blame, what do you think of the allegation that the SAR government of Hong Kong has paid a reputational price because of perhaps the media coverage that helps shape public perceptions about what's really going on in Hong Kong? Now, what we see every day on television, radio, websites, it's violence. It's the anger of the young people. It seems cops have been losing control, and the situation is spiraling out of control. What do you think of, say, the capability of the SAR government to handle public relations, to handle the media?
First, let me just add a footnote to what my colleague said. Yes, I mean, the rule of law itself, I mean, I don't think that it has no future, but it's really under great pressure, I mean, the rule of law, because, I mean, I think rule of law has some basic values: order, certainty, and justice. But, I mean, chaos destroys order. And, I mean, with these riots going on every day, I mean, people just feel uncertain about the future. And also, if you throw gasoline bombs to the police and you use laser light into their eyes and without being punished, I mean, that's against, I mean, the justice against fairness. That's the very spirit of rule of law. So, I mean, this principle of rule of law is under great pressure during this event. And you're right, I mean, media coverage, I think, has played I have to say, not a very good role, especially those, some of the local media and the Western media. I mean, their coverage are not complete. They sort of emphasize on the police behavior, and they sort of omit those violent behaviors, those violent acts of the protesters. And it looks like, I mean, the police are just being quite unable to doing with these kind of events. But actually, this is not the whole picture.
Very articulate, well said. Let me cross over to Hong Hao, who is the chief strategist of the Bank of Communications International, based in Hong Kong. Obviously, Mr. Hong, ambitious people, wealthy people, and well-educated people all want to converge in Hong Kong for at least the following reasons. First of all, the SAR government is known for being one of integrity. And then the business community is known for its efficiency. And above all, this territory is known for its law and order. People feel safe there. However, everything seems to have been put into the perspective of uncertainty, unpredictability, due to the media, which covers the violence, the anger. Now, do you think the issue of Hong Kong has been blown out of control? I mean, have been exaggerated?
I think it's, to a certain extent, exaggerated. I think the media, especially the Western media, they love dramatic headlines, you know, basically increase the hit rates of the news items. And also, you know, because the younger generation here in Hong Kong, you know, according to some survey conducted by Hong Kong University, you know, the recognition of the younger generation Hong Kong people themselves as a Chinese person is only less than 20%. So, you know, a majority of Hong Kong students in that survey actually do not sort of recognize themselves as a Chinese identity. So, you know, there are many risks in this society. I think on the surface it's peaceful, prosperous, but then there's undercurrent, and I think in this event, you know, those undercurrents are being taken advantage of by some people, you know, who have, you know, evil purpose, you know, in Hong Kong.
How important is the rule of law in ensuring the sustainable prosperity of Hong Kong? This question was asked over and over ahead of the handover back in 1997 about the ability of the ICR government and about the partnership between the ICR government and the Chinese mainland in ensuring continued and sustainable prosperity. Looking back at the chaos in the territory, do you think rule of law has been seriously undermined? Is it badly needed to maintain the special status of Hong Kong as the financial hub in Northeast Asia?
Well, I have two observations. First of all, I do not think the rule of law system is really seriously undermined in Hong Kong. As I said, the law and order is being challenged, but we have to let the Hong Kong find a way to deal with all the protests. Or mean
in other words, you are fully convinced that the ICR government and the law enforcement personnel are fully capable of doing the things, handling the things themselves?
So far, we don't have a strong evidence they cannot deal with it. Okay, you know, media coverage, but so far, hey, there are some bad stuff, but it's not. I think it's within the control. But second thing I do want to say is that when we talk about rule of law, the different layers of a rule of law, okay, the enforcement system to deal with the law and order issues is one part. But fundamentally, I do think there are something probably can be enhanced when it comes to the sort of more constitutional design of the one country, two system. One country, two system is a grand idea. It's really fulfilling the return of Hong Kong. Also, you know, it's huge. But however, I think there are some elements can be enhanced. Now, when I look at the basic law, when you're looking at it, where is the enforcement system? We do not have the basic law court. We do not have a basic law prosecutors. Okay, said another way, there's no central government's components in Hong Kong to enforce the basic law. I think that's probably one of the things that are probably a little bit missing. It's not a huge problem, but over the long term, probably when we're looking into it, there's maybe some kind of design issue. When I think back the time that China and the United Kingdom were working on the joint declaration, they probably followed a bit more British thinking. But when we're looking at it, they're probably lacking of so-called, you know, we call the federalist thinking, in a way that the central government, yes, give a huge autonomy to Hong Kong. Okay, we have a huge declaration, huge promise in the joint declaration, which implemented by the basic law. But however, if you're looking at it, who's going to enforce it? The basic law. Who is going to enforce it? And what if the chief executive do something which is inconsistent?
Congress, the Supreme People's Court would have interpretations about what should be executed in Hong Kong.
Well, that's legislation. That's not about enforcement.
It's the relationship.
Yeah.
You're right. We need to have a special body in charge of execution of the laws to make sure that the things will work out smoothly in Hong Kong. Okay, let me cross over to Mr. Hong Hao. Now, when we address the issue of rule of law, perhaps we should move our eyes to yet another relevant issue, education. Since 22 years ago, when Hong Kong was returned to the sovereignty of the Chinese mainland, not enough job may have been done to ensure young people are patriotic enough, they learn enough about the past of China to ensure that they are part of not only China but part of Chinese culture. What do you think of the importance of education and perhaps the alleged failure in this particular area to sort of decolonialize?
Yeah. Well, I think. Yeah. Well, I think it's a long-term issue, and I think certainly because under the one country two system, we gave Hong Kong very high degree of autonomy. So as a result, probably there's not enough guidance and direction given to the educational system here. So I think most of the schools here, they have their own teaching materials, and many of the school teachers are educated overseas. Maybe they are using that sort of a value system to instill that sort of value system into younger generation of Hong Kong people. So as a result, the consequences that the recognition of Chinese identity amongst the younger generation of Hong Kong people is not sufficient, and I think that creates a social undercurrent here. So I think going into the longer term, looking into the future, definitely more needs to be done to correct what hasn't been done in the past.
When we have the benefits of doubt about the lack of good education for the younger generation, do we have any margin for seeking a solution for the young people?
Well, we got to find some solutions. When we talk about education, I actually went back to 1995. I actually, when I was at university, I was in a summer camp, a summer exchange camp with the Hong Kong students. Actually, we made some very lifelong friendships.
Were you the student of Peking University?
Yes, I was in the Peking University.
So it's part of the exchange program?
Yes, like 200 students getting together, and it was really great memory. It was a really great memory.
Back in the year 2008, two major events took place in Chinese mainland. One is the Beijing Olympic Games, the other devastating earthquake in Wenchuan. And people, young and old in Hong Kong, reached out to those who were buried in the debris in Wenchuan, and they celebrated the success of the Olympic Games. They felt strongly that they are one of the Chinese
so I think right now
member of the Chinese family.
Right. I think right now when we look back, we probably all of us, right, everyone underestimate the kind of efforts that really require to mainland China, for mainland China and Hong Kong. I mean, younger generation, or older generation, to really share the same kind of thinking or mentality, or what kind of effort is required to sort of disappear the kind of a misperception. I think we all underestimate. Many people, including successful people, business elites, probably enjoy way too much about the kind of business success, but people forgot about how much effort it really required.
Commonwealth.
Right, exactly.
Co-prosperity of the people.
Right.
Let me go back to Hong Hao for the issue of education. Now, this year alone, we have to, find 11 million jobs for the young university graduates. Now, at the same time, do you think the central authorities in the Chinese mainland would also encourage disillusion the young people in Hong Kong to come here, at least to go to the more prosperous Great Bay Area and find their opportunities there? Do you think the other issue, Hong Hao, is do you think young people with a university degree of the Chinese mainland could also find a job easily back in Hong Kong?
The economy here in Hong Kong, the city is slowing down. And also the Chinese economy is under transition as well. So I think greater integration between, from Hong Kong into mainland should be encouraged. I think under that guidance, and the design of the Greater Bay Area, we have seen much cross-border talent movements. Already, we've seen many of the younger Hong Kong students seeking education, university education in mainland universities. Not only because probably the education standard is more is probably higher, but then also, you know, it's very cost effective as well. And by the time, you know, they get a degree from, you know, one of the top universities, from mainland universities, then, you know, it's actually easier for them to find jobs here in Hong Kong. And also the language skill in terms of the ability to speak Mandarin is substantially better as well. So I think gradually, you know, for me, for example, you know, in my department, you know, we're seeing more and more resume from Hong Kong students with mainland backgrounds, mainland university educations, come seeking jobs, and, you know, we did see better quality from these candidates.
Thank you so much. You are watching Dialogue with Mr. He Jing, the lawyer, Professor Liao Fan, and Mr. Hong Hao, Chief Strategist with the Bank of Communications International. We are discussing the importance of rule of law for Hong Kong and why education is also very, very important. However, it is very embarrassing to notice that it is in this area many young people may have been misguided. When we come back, we'll ask more questions as to why. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Let me go back to Hong Hao. Shenzhen is the place where Huawei and Tencent are located. And do you think these two big examples will offer a lot of inspirations for young people from Hong Kong? And even Angela Merkel, German Chancellor, chose to visit Shenzhen during a short stay in the PRC for the official visit. What can you tell us about, say, the potential for, you know, to have more policy incentives to attract more young people from Hong Kong for the very reason of being more innovative and innovation-driven to sustain the local growth?
Yeah, well, I think the idea of having the Greater Bay Area design really is to integrate, you know, many of the great cities in this region. So Shenzhen obviously is taking the lead as an innovation hub in this region, and Hong Kong is servicing as a traditional finance center. But then at the same time, you know, you can see that Shenzhen, you know, on one hand it has very superb technological innovation skill, but then at the same time the stock market and the financial market in Shenzhen is growing exponentially as well. So, you know, Hong Kong is an example of the lack of top-down design and top-down strategy for a city to grow into the future, and then gradually lost its way. So basically, business here, you know, in the past 22 years, trying to find the easy way out. You know, basically, is, you know, putting money into real estate, properties, and financial industries. You know, because those are the quickest money to be made in the past 22 years. But then at the same time, you know, that kind of strategy, you know, has proven to be short-sighted with hindsight from today. So I think, you know, going forward, you know, because we have a design of the Greater Bay Area and further integration between cities, then I would say it's better for Hong Kong to start to rethink its role in this area, and also start to really cooperate, you know, with other cities, especially as cities such as Shenzhen, you know, to sort of round up its shortcoming and, you know, combining the technological innovation skill with its own existing financial skills, you know, to grow into the future. Probably, you know, that could be one of the ways out.
Mr. Hong, let me ask you one more question. The Hong Kong HKSAR government has cut its forecast of the region's GDP to between 0 and 1% year-on-year for the whole of 2019. At the beginning of this year, the government had predicted the GDP for 2019 would be between 2 and 3% due to the turbulence in Hong Kong. That forecast has been seriously cut.
The estimates from the Hong Kong government on its economy may prove to be too optimistic. You know, 0 to 1% would be, you know, the best outcome that, you know, in the coming months. So you know, I think, you know, with the social events happening here, and also with a rapid slowdown, but not just here in Hong Kong, but also in the U.S. and European area, I think the pressure on economic growth can prove to be substantially higher than the government estimates. So I think as a result, you know, we should try our best to prevent the worst outcome I think so far, since a couple of weeks ago, the riots in the Hong Kong airport, the table is slowly turning. I think more and more people, I've seen more and more people supporting the Hong Kong government and the central government and putting more faith in the government's ability to handle the situation. I think that the table is slowly turning, even though we wish it can be turned faster.
Mr. Hong, a stimulus package of up to 19 billion US dollar, Hong Kong dollars, about 2.4 billion US dollars, will be injected into the Hong Kong economy. It's comprised of a series of relief measures aimed at boosting the growth. The young students will benefit. Low-income families will also be beneficiaries, and small and medium-sized enterprises stand ready to gain the benefits. Do you think short-term Hong Kong's economy will be revitalized to keep it alive, at least?
I think it is a relief, but then at the same time, one has to recognize that the challenges that the Hong Kong economy is facing, and also because of the entrenched disparity of wealth distribution. I think the lower echelon of the society may not get enough incentive to spend to help the economy grow. But then at the same time, we're still facing a huge housing bubble, uneven social wealth distribution, and also many other social issues as well. So I would say that the rescue package is good, but then it's only a short-term temporary relief on the Hong Kong economy.
Thank you so much. Well, law is law. When we look at how cops in New York reacted to those who occupied Wall Street, a lot of force were applied by the law enforcement cops in New York. And some of the netizens in the Chinese mainland said, what would cops in New York have done under the same situation in Hong Kong? This is a good question.
No, I think it's a wrong question.
Because the Western media described Hong Kong as a pro-democracy. So they were lashing out against the law enforcement measures. We need to draw a parallel comparison between Hong Kong and New York, where a few years ago we had the Occupy Wall Street movement, and we saw cops step in rudely, pulling people out of the Wall Street. In Hong Kong, when the cops had done the same, they were immediately called hooligans or brutal use of force. So is there a kind of a parallel comparison? Hong Kong is known for rule of law. The United States is known for rule of law. You're a beneficiary of the legal education in the United States. That's why I ask you why. Why we have those double standards in
well,
the Western media reports?
I think a different context is, I actually personally think it's probably a better choice for police, anywhere the police, okay, to exercise discretion in withholding using excessive force. And that's very important part. Okay, I don't have any comments because I didn't really watch closely about what the New York police did. But I think for this one, well, in Hong Kong, you already seeing a lot of action taken by the police. It's probably not sufficient. But I do really think if the police that do more or use more force will stop all the protests. I doubt. Okay, the part of it is political action. And these moments, actually, the kind of humility or the self-exercise, wider exercise of how to use force, probably wiser option. It needs a political solution.
Obviously, Western media may have been enslaved by a sentiment, a kind of sentiment against whatever the mainland may have done. For example, the bureau chief of CNN in Hong Kong apologized to the police department of Hong Kong for giving the erroneous report. Who should take the blame for throwing the Molotov bottle? Such things happened in 2008 when the torch relay was going on in many of the cities across the world to ensure the success of Beijing Olympic Games. Western media gave biased reports, twisted reports. This time around, Hong Kong may have emerged as yet another example for them to attack.
Yeah, I
you
mean,
have the same feeling.
Yeah, I agree with my colleague that whenever it's in the United States or in Hong Kong, police should try to avoid excessive use of, their force. But what I want to emphasize is that if under certain circumstances, when the police have to use force, have to use, some kind of measure to stop violence, to restore stability, I think the standard, the criteria of judging their behavior should be the same. You cannot say, if in the United States, in New York, that's necessary for restore stability, for enforce the law. If it's in Hong Kong, if it's in part of China, then it's kind of a brutal
To conclude
behavior.
our brainstorming here about the future of Hong Kong and the reality on the ground in Hong Kong, let me give you a quick examination. Here is a photo posted and that went viral on the social media. 3 cops produced a pistol in front of a big crowd of up to 100 young people. Now, Western media only focused on the pistols without giving the context that these 3 cops would be the victims of a stampede, and the crowd were descending on them. Some of them were waving the bars and bricks. Lives of the cops were in serious danger. So in this case, they took out the gun. Now immediately, these cops became casualties of Western media who said they adhere to the principle of impartiality. That's an open question mark. I promise to bring you guys back for yet another round of discussion about what's going on really there. Let's have the truth, not stereotyped perceptions. Until next time, goodbye.